The year is over, and what an end to the year for the Pacers, who win their third in a row in a story-filled game. 2 records tied. Wally Szczerbiak and Hallie chat. We'll talk best of 2023 and Pacers Knicks with Zach Pearson on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Sunday/Monday whenever you're listening, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and depending on when you're listening, Happy New Year. We've got a lot to talk about today. What a game for the Pacers Saturday night. They play the Knicks. Tyrese Haliburton ties a franchise record. The Pacers tie a franchise record. Wally Szczerbiak sits courtside and sees it all. There's so much to talk about from that game. The Knicks trade for OG Anunoby. We don't even cover that today. I'll talk about OG Anunoby, that trade, what it means for the Pacers tomorrow. But the year's over. It's time for a favorite yearly show, looking back at the best of 2023 for the Indiana Pacers, and who better to do it with than the guy we've done it with every year so far, Zach Pearson from Pacers Press. We'll talk Pacers Knicks. We'll talk Pacers Bucks a little because that game's tonight, and we'll talk the best of the year on today's podcast. Let's just get right into it. I thought this show would be easy. Talk about a Knicks game, talk about 2023, look at the Bucks a little bit, and then the craziest game of the Pacers season, maybe, in terms of records and stories, just pops up out of nowhere on Saturday night, 2023, ending on a high note with lots of franchise records. And who better to come back for our yearly tradition, recapping the best of the year? It's Zach Pearson from Pacers Press. Zach, we had Szczerbiak. We had franchise records for assists. We had franchise records for threes. We've got John Stockton and Magic Johnson references being pulled out for stat lines. Did you have a favorite thing from Pacers Knicks? It was quite the game.
It was an awesome game. Yeah, I thought one of the coolest moments throughout. Obviously, Tyrese Haliburton went off, but I tweeted out a picture of it. They showed on the broadcast about Wally and Tyrese having a little bit of a stare down, little chat back and forth. I'm pretty sure Wally is over that by now, but it's something that he's just gonna have to take. So. That was definitely a pretty cool moment to see, just Tyrese and him being in person too. I think a lot of people on Twitter were talking like, that's a mistake, but he's got to do a job, so you can only do so much at that point.
It was the first time Haliburton got to finish a game against him since then, because he got hurt in New York last year.
Yeah. In
their first game after the comments. Okay, I agree with you. You're right. They both kind of wanted to be over, but I'm not going to speak for Tyrese Haliburton. I'm just going to use facts about him to talk about this for a second. He admits all the time that he's petty. He also has admitted that he holds the smallest things as motivation, like tweets from accounts with like 4 followers. He'll like bookmark for motivation, right? So an actual serious thing that happened in the NBA landscape, like he is going to use that as motivation. I know he'll toe the party line and say like, yeah, it's just a little side story. It's over now. But like he will use those kind of things to motivate him. And he certainly did in this game. It was very clear. I don't remember what the play was where he looked at him the first time in the fourth quarter. But then between the free throws he did, and then again when he tied the franchise record with the 23rd assist, it's clearly looking right at him. And I asked him after the game if it motivated him at all. He said yes on no uncertain terms. So I think they're both ready to put it behind him, obviously, and Szczerbiak has since apologized, and now Haliburton's had his game against him. It's all cool. I thought it was fun. I like extracurriculars like that, but I also do think it's now an over thing. Haliburton did show that it is the wannabe was the wrong word to use in that moment.
Yeah, and I think what's funny too is like after Wally said that, Tyrese had never been an All-Star, but he might actually be a lock for an All-Star for like the next 10 years easily. And so it's just like funny to see the start of that chain reaction kind of from where he was last year to now. So
yeah, he took off like right away after that last year too, right? Like
yeah, pretty much.
Right, good games all in a row, and that's when he was like, hey, he's right on the edge to like, oh yeah, okay, he's gonna make it this year. And now he's doing it against the Knicks and against his friend Jalen Brunson, and a pretty like that. The context of this game is weird because the Knicks rotation was so random. I'll talk about the Anunoby trade tomorrow, I guess. That would have been a topic on this if this game wasn't so drama-filled and there wasn't the yearly show to do.
Right.
But they were like, their starting lineup was still good, but their bench was not at all. So it was a weird game. But the Knicks are still good, and like Brunson was good and Randall was good. So to have something to push the Pacers to an important win, 3 in a row heading into the new year. They close out an important sketch that I highlighted on their schedule going 4-2. Whatever they needed to have that extra kick in the pants. I'm all. I think they're all about it, and they got it done. Okay, but that doesn't even that's like, we'll toss that to the side. John Stockton and Magic Johnson are the only two players ever before this week to have consecutive games scoring 20 points and dishing out 20 assists. And now, for the first time in either of our lives, Zach, someone has done it. Someone else has done it. It was Tyrese Haliburton, who did it in Chicago in a game that he was kind of missing some shots and didn't even feel like he had the scoring impact. In this one, he was the only player on the Pacers against the Knicks who shot under 50% from three. He was on fire from two. He got to the foul line, 22 points, 23 assists, 2 turnovers, third player ever to have consecutive 20-20 games. Insane. It's just like totally insane. No one on the Pacers except for James Johnson was alive the last time this happened in the NBA.
Yeah,
the 23rd assist late in the game. The 23rd assist tied Jamal Tinsley for the Pacers franchise record for assists in a game, which is also nuts. Haliburton's going to have that on his own at some point. I don't know when. That's fantastic. He said he didn't know what the franchise record was, or he would have gone for 24, which he could have gotten. He's just on it right now. And the Knicks kind of blitzed and then retreated from it early in the game, and then they were hard blitzing him late in the game. So not only did he set a record, he did it against the coverage that provided him a ton of press this month because it was changing the way he was being played, and he had to adjust to it. It was an all-timer performance from him, following up another all-timer performance from him. A week to remember passing the ball, and of course his teammates deserve credit for making shots. We'll talk about that in a second, but he's on another level right now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, he's been doing that. I mean, all season. Obviously, he's been so impressive. But I've been talking to a couple people outside, like after the games as well, and it's almost like it's not like a quiet game for him. Like he's always kind of going in the fourth. It seems like, but throughout the game, it almost is like in the first half, he's just kind of like seeing what the punches are being thrown at him, and then kind of like dishing the ball where it needs to go before kind of turning on the switch to score. And when he's done that, he's been so good. And I tweeted this a couple, maybe last week, like when he's not hitting or anything, like when he's just not on, you can tell like the whole kind of offensive flow is off. So the Pacers being really reliant on him has been maybe some of their issue with that 4-game losing streak. But when he is on, it's the best, and it's easy to root for and cheer for. So he's been on it, and 20 and 20 back to back is insane.
It's wild that this was kind of the case with Ben Mathurin last year. His free throw rate's down this year, so this isn't the same. But last year Mathurin could shoot like 3 for 10, but he'd shoot 7 or 8 free throws, and so his efficiency was still good, right? Haliburton, it's a different thing, but like he'll go 2 for 9 from 3 like this, and he made a bunch of 2, so it's different. But like a wildly effective game because he's just completely carving up the defense and tossing these awesome passes, and they have to react to him. Then everybody else is having a nice night, and like that keeps your offense going. If you miss a bunch of threes and can't get going, like if you hit 5 for 9 from deep in this game, right? That's 9 more points. Like that's a 30-20 game with 2 turnovers. Like they would have won by 40. Like it's just nuts what he's been able to do, and doing it in consecutive games is absolutely bananas. And the Zerbiak part of it was fun. And that isn't even the last franchise record that we have to talk about from this game. I thought this was fitting because I'm corny. They had the last game of 2023. Tyrese Haliburton tied the record with 23 assists as an individual. And the Pacers tied the franchise record with 23 made threes as a team. Derek Kramer got me on this one, so shout out to him for pointing it out after the game. Outside of Tyrese Haliburton, hilariously, everybody who attempted a three in this game for the Pacers shot at least 50% from three, which is just like insane. Nesmith was on fire. Turner was on fire. Matherin was on fire. I mean, no matter who shot it, you felt good about it. And look, when you set a franchise record, like, yeah, they were hot. They were hot from three. Like that's undeniable. They went 23 of 42. They made over half of them, but they were all like pretty open, right? Like they did a good job with what the Knicks, how the Knicks were covering them and providing them with opportunities to seize that space. And they always talk about this, right? Paint to great. They want to get in the paint to get better shots elsewhere, whether it's in the paint or beyond the arc. They did that all night, no matter who was in at point guard. And they deserve credit for creating the open threes as much as they do making them. So 23 threes, 23 assists for an individual to end up 2023. That's pretty cool. Lots of records, and they were on fire from deep.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said, Neesmith was on fire. It's much easier to get 20 assists when everybody makes everything. And the Pacers were just doing that all night long. Even Miles Turner, I think he made 6 threes, which is just, that's exactly what you want out of Miles. I think he took like 8 total, but, still making 6 is awesome. And yeah, like I said, everything's just going to be a ton easier spacing wise if people can hit like that. The shooting percentages were crazy. But everybody did kind of seem open like that, but the Knicks, to their credit, they were hitting as well. So like the Pacers answered, luckily. But yeah, that was just awesome to see the flow of the offense through Tyrese that way.
The Pacers were terrible for the first like 3 minutes of the game. It was like 13-4, like you snapped your fingers, right? And they were awesome the rest of the game, but like the Knicks shot really well from three, 17 of 37. They had fewer turnovers. They crushed on the offensive glass, like so many numbers that said the Knicks should have won this game. But the Pacers, outside of that first stretch, defended pretty well again. I mean, not great, but better than they have against good teams in the past. They did well against Randall. They did well enough against Brunson. If DiVincenzo wasn't on fire, they would have had a really great defensive game. They beat a good team. They set some records. That's a good win. That's a good way to end a 3-game winning streak and end the year. Pacers needed some cushion heading into their January, and they got it. Hey, guys, have to really quickly talk to you about the lovely people over at FanDuel. The NFL season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. $150. How about that? That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is super easy to use, and there's so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. They have new bets that you can figure out in their Explore tab. You can make a parlay in their Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and they have plenty more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockdown for that offer. Win or lose, $150 if you place that $5 bet and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. And Zach, the year is over. It's time for our fun. The best of the year heading into a new year. We do this every year. I'll have to put this episode out early so it doesn't come out in 2024. We each came up with our 3 best Pacers moments of 2023. The game last night is a contender for me, Zach. It was quite the night. I will let you go first. Give me one of your top 3 Pacers moments for 2023.
Okay, so the game last night was really, really good, but I'm going to leave that off the table for a different game. Going to go Pacers versus Boston, the in-season tournament game. One that I was actually there in person for, is one of the loudest I can remember the Fieldhouse being for a long time, and it was just one of those all-time kind of games that you can see. The crowd was into it the whole time. Tyrese went off. It was just fun to see that atmosphere and that playoff kind of feel with the in-season tournament. Something I really want to see back, hopefully soon for the Pacers. But yeah, I think that was as close as we're going to get for at least, until we find out how the season shakes out. But yeah, it was a really fun game. Boston's a great team. I don't think Porzingis played, but it was still a really fun team, fun game. So that was one of my best of the year for sure.
Yeah, they played a team that beat them by 51 earlier in the same season, right? And Haliburton did not play that night, and Porzingis did. Okay, I get that. They played it an in-season tournament game. And the thing about this that I don't want to get too on my soapbox here. That game, they did not know they were going to have a home game or who their opponent was going to be until 5 days before, right? So they could sell tickets because they knew they were going to have a home game 10 days before or something. I forget exactly how the in-season tournament shook out, but they didn't know who they were going to play, what day it was going to be. So the fact that they were able to get the building to that level, to play a Celtics team that you don't have a lot of time to prep for because of all that, an unscheduled game, right? A team that kicked your butt, to have their best to that point, to me, defensive game of the season, to have Haliburton play a very Tyrese Haliburton game, a triple-double. Are you kidding? On national TV, they were on TNT for the first time, to beat the Celtics, who still, to me, have been the best team in the NBA this season. They were 15-4 entering that game. That was we don't know what the Pacers season is going to end up being. They could have an awful January. We've seen that they can have a low stretch after a couple weeks ago, and they could be 3 games, 4 games, 5 games under 500 a month from now. But if they can keep their head above water for January and then, be a team that is ready for a postseason or plan or whatever, that night will be the turning point to me. They entered at 10-8 and they've beaten some good teams, but lost to some crappy teams. And they exited that night, headed to Vegas. Everyone was like, oh, the Pacers might be pretty good. And I think that was a significant moment for the growth of this team and really you were there, the gripping of a fan base. It was a big deal. It was awesome.
Yeah, especially it being on national TV. I mean, you couldn't really have asked for a better stage. So to play like that, like you said, was just awesome to see.
So I will springboard off of you because one of my 3 was just the in-season tournament, right? I didn't put a specific moment as my best of the year. This was what made it so special. But, they have talked about, mainly Tyrese, but the team in general, they had the one national TV game this year. This coming January, so a month from now, basically, if you're listening to this when it comes out, in Boston, right? They know it. They know when it is. They want to be ready for it. And that's great because they want that attention. They feel like, they're good and ascending. So to earn more of them, and we just talked about one of them, to earn more of them, TNT once, ESPN twice, to play well in them is already impressive, right? They put a lot on their own shoulders and they handled it well. To beat 2 awesome teams, the 2 best teams in the East, on that stage, very impressive. To go to Vegas with the glitz and glamour and the media attention on their team and have that ascent in front of everybody was so incredible. That is hard to do. The mental toll that could have taken. If they had gotten smoked by Milwaukee, I'd have been like, yep, they weren't ready for a game like that. And everyone would have understood. I mean, they would have gotten crushed. They should have if that happened, but everyone would have understood why. But they didn't. They were ready for it. They were down 3 in the fourth quarter in the finals, and they were not really in that game. The Lakers were much better than them. But to have that whole run, establish a team, put them on the map, take them from young, scrappy, ascending Pacers to and even the Pacers have said this, now when they play teams, there is no more the Pacers sneak up on you and you're not ready to play. Everyone's like, oh, these guys can beat anybody. They're very good. They have a high peak. The whole in-season tournament run was a very special part of this year for that team, and it was really fun to cover it. And Vegas specifically, I think, was a big deal for them. It was really fun way for 2023 to go for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, the playoff feel, I don't think you can really simulate that. So for that young team being able to show what they are capable of in that kind of atmosphere was really, really cool to see. And there were some fun battles throughout. I mean, they didn't lose up until the end. So it was really cool to see them get hot like that. And I think the players really took it seriously. You could tell they were all in. So it was really cool to see.
I don't know how much playoff experience can be quantified on the scoreboard when the playoffs come, but let's pretend the Pacers are the 7 seed this year or the 8 seed and they lose 4-2 instead of 4-1. You can be well, that could have gone a lot worse if the in-season tournament didn't happen. Or they avoid a sweep or something. Maybe they do better than that, right? They have clearly shown they have a high peak, but they could legitimately have one more win because they're more mentally prepared to me. That is realistic. I don't think it's going to be swinging a series, but it could matter in a close game come playoff time. I will go next. I like being able to draw. What I like about this is it forces me to look back at last season and see if there was any special games. And there was one. There were a couple, but there was one. And I remembered this game earlier this week too, just because I was thinking back. Pacers Bulls in Chicago back in March. And this game, I don't remember. People don't remember this. Pacers were fighting for the play-in still, right? This was pretty late in the season. They were in this was the Pacers, to do some quick math, 67th game. And they were in Chicago, and winning would have put them ahead of the Bulls in the standings and clinch the tiebreaker. So if there was if there was a chance at the play-in, this was a very significant game. And in the fourth quarter, let me count really quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times in the final 5 minutes of this game, 5.5 minutes of this game, the lead changed hands. The Bulls had it, the Pacers had it, Bulls had it, Pacers had it. It was tied a lot. Levine was hitting shots. DeRozan was hitting shots. And pointedly, Zach LaVine, with 49 seconds left, hit a shot to give the Bulls the lead. And then he made 2 free throws to tie the game with 22 seconds left. And then Tyrese Haliburton, of course, with Patrick Beverley guarding him, a guy who had talked about Haliburton's season and merit and his ascent, and was just interested in Tyrese Haliburton as a young player, was guarding him, and Haliburton called his own number, waved off a play, and with 2 seconds left, 30 feet, step back right over Patrick Beverley, bam, drills it, huge shot, one of his signature shots of last season, but the one of 2023, the 2023 part of it, over Patrick Beverley. Pacers win. They pass the Bulls in the standings. Huge game, huge win, awesome shot. Haliburton would get hurt again, and then they would not make the play-in, and that didn't end up mattering as much as it felt like it did in the moment. But that was such an awesome game and a huge moment for him again. And that could have been, had they made the play-in and gotten some earlier experience, like we talked about on that stage, a very significant shot, because he played that game, he played 2 more, and then he missed 6 in a row, and they only won 2 of them. And then he returned for 2, and they lost both of those. Like, their season very quickly took a turn after that. But had they made the play-in, him returning that night too, because he missed the Spurs game right before that, with that performance, would have meant everything to them. It was such an awesome game and an awesome moment.
Yeah, and I think the Pacers to this point really haven't had that much success in the play-in. I think last year, like you said, they didn't even make it to it. But I think the one game they played was that against the Wizards.
For the Hornets and Wizards that first year.
And Wizards, yeah, and I don't think we won a game. So that was something that I think if they do find themselves in the play-in spot, they're obviously going to be trying to get past that this year and try to get into the playoffs. So you saw signs of Tyrese showing that he can, do things in the clutch. And I think this year he's done that even better. So that being kind of the initial signs of, oh, hey, Tyrese is going to be that guy for us is really cool to look back on for sure.
Similar to Wally for the Pacers-Knicks game last night, with Patrick Beverley on him, made it a little more too. And that adds respect for both guys. And look, no one talks about that anymore, right? You move past it once the moment happens. I think a similar thing will happen with Zerbiak. One more break here, guys, so I can talk to you about the lovely people over at PrizePicks, the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. And it's simple what you do on PrizePicks. You pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. For example, this line might not be the specific line, but Luka Doncic for more than or less than 32 points, or LeBron James for more than or less than 7 assists. That's what you pick, 2 to 6 players every night, and watch the winnings roll in. With basketball season and football going at the same time, you can do combo league projections. For example, LeBron James and Travis Kelce had a 10.5 combo of three-pointers made plus receptions. You can play alongside PrizePicks' favorite players like Meek Mill or comedian Andrew Scholes. You can do their community plays under their promos tab. They have a reboot policy if your players get injured. It's the best way to play daily fantasy sports. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA with the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100 at PrizePicks. Daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, your second best of 2023, Zach Pearson.
Okay, so looking back, I think I talked a little bit about Wally earlier, but I wanted to say Tyrese making the All-Star team.
Oh, yes.
I think that was a cool moment for the franchise. I think he definitely earned it. There was so much banter that went into that. And I think I remember Woj saying something like, Wally's comments probably helped Tyrese get in, so it's like peak marketing right there. But I think that whole saga was really fun. I think everybody really rallied around Tyrese because that the player community did as well. A lot of quote tweets and tweets from players kind of supporting Tyrese. It's just cool to see Indiana's guy, get that, kind of love from everybody. And you want that. He's a young talent, and, he's going to probably represent Indiana for a long time at the All-Star level. So, that was kind of a cool start to that. In 2023, really, kind of I think was that initial, like I said earlier, step forward for Tyrese. And I think that's, like I said, not something that's going to just go away. So, that was a really cool moment. And I think there's many more to come.
Yeah, Wally had those comments December 18th when the Pacers played the Knicks, and he was bad that night for his own standards, 5 for 16, 15 and 10 game. And then for the rest of 2022, so this isn't 2023, but the next 6 games, he averaged 27 points per game. He had the sick game in Boston. He had the game winner in Miami. They beat the Cavs. They beat the Clippers. They beat the Hawks. They beat the Heat and the Celtics in that 6-game stretch. And he was awesome in all of them. And then the year flipped, and he had 3 huge assist games as they beat Portland, who still had Dame, and they beat Charlotte, and they beat Toronto. Like that stretch of his play happening right after he got inadvertently launched into more all-star debates, made it more possible. I think his stats alone and his play alone, they were, I forget exactly where they were in the East, right when his injury happened on the 11th in New York, ironically, but they were in the solidly in the mix of the standings at the time. They had a winning record, I believe, or 500 record or something. That's actually not that hard to check. So that actually helped them. And so to be that, I think Woj was, they were 23-19 when they lost in New York. Because they were 23-18 halfway point. So that helped him. And to be named an All-Star deservedly was awesome. Something he very badly wanted, but he was like the last guy in, right? And so to have that kind of added attention and to follow it up with those games says a lot about him, right? Like he, every moment in his career when he's been tasked with hey, here's a big moment for you. Like people are watching you. He's been like, okay, I'm going to be really good for this stretch. So I agree. That was very cool. And he was ready for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think really this entire season, I know it's not like last season for his first All-Star, but he really doesn't have many bad games this year. I mean, maybe a handful, but every game he's nearing a double-double if he doesn't have one. And he's just the entire flow of the offense. So, I think it's just kind of cool to see his trajectory kind of stay on that pace. And he really doesn't have bad games anymore, which is a high standard to hold to, but that's the level he wants to play on. So,
yeah, 2 things about that. One, they're very rare, and 2, well, because of how good he is, when they happen, they just lose. When they played the Magic this season, when he had 8 points, he had 8 against somebody else. He had 12 against the Magic. They had no chance. He had 8 against, I forget who. They had no chance, right? He is so important for them, and that's good and bad, but it says a lot about what he is. Okay, I had a couple contenders for the last best of 2023 spot here. Funnily enough, yes, this game last night against 2 nights ago, if you're listening on just January 1st, is a contender to me. I know it's very recent to say that, but to have, I mean, look, I was there, so a lot is going to stand out to me. But Rick Carlisle with the quote of the year before the game, comparing the Pacers offense to a pretty girl, but then their win-loss record to her sucking at defense was very funny. There was a baby race. There was the Zerbiak storyline. There was a fun basketball game. I was personally amped because I was watching the Pistons on press row, and they ended their losing streak. They won an important game. They had set a franchise record as a team. They had a player tie a very an assist record for a franchise is a huge deal. He didn't break it, so it's not going to be a huge story. And then to have it happen in a game with the side story of Zerbiak, that's cool. That's an awesome game. That is a fun night, sold out against a team that they have a historic rivalry against. That is actually, I think, what I would make my third moment of 2023. But I would subtly throw in the 309-point game in Atlanta, also in season tournament, of course. But that Hawks game was I won't. That's an unforgettable kind of game, right? To have one of the top 20 scoring games ever. 152 to 157. Are you kidding? It was the talk of the league the next day. People who cover other teams were texting me about it. I talked to, I went to the Mad Ants game the next day. All them were talking about it. I asked Tom Hankins about it. Everybody, they shot over 60% from the field. the Pacers hit. It was insane. The Hawks shot 60%. Both teams did. They were on fire from deep. They had no like insane stat lines, but a lot of really good ones. But like just to see 157, 152 was absolutely nuts. To see them hit all these threes, it was crazy. They had so many. Like the Hawks had their record for points and a half. The Pacers had their record for points a game. I think Haliburton set some record that night. I think, it was threes made by a Pacers player. Like there was so many things that happened. You're like, holy cow, this game was just insane. There was records after records, and it was so nuts.
Yeah, and I think if you're the Hawks and you score 152 and lose, that's got to be the most depressing, experience post game. Like what more can we do? But I think the Knicks game as well last night, being a contender for sure. I think it's kind of just the perfect way to end the year. I think you're on the uptrend. You have a new lineup, and you're really trying things out. I think Carlisle's gonna really keep experimenting. Probably Bruce Brown still has to return, so you see where he fits in the lineup as well. But I think that was the perfect way to end 2023, and hopefully it's going to be at that same level going forward.
I remember the other records now from that game. Tyrese Haliburton's third quarter, we had 26 points, broke the old record, which was held by Tyrese Haliburton and Jordan Nwora. Funnily enough, in Atlanta. I forgot about that third quarter when I was just looking at the box score. He had the record for threes in a quarter. The Pacers were one shy of their record. Obviously, 157 to 152 speaks for themselves. Maybe that should be my third one. I mean, that's just insane. Those numbers are off the charts. Zach, your last one. Your last 2023 best of for the Pacers.
Okay, so this one is really not a moment, but more of just the emergence of Jalen Smith and Aaron Nesmith.
Nice.
I think in the lineup, they are proven, and I'm always going to root for those 2020 draft guys that we got that can really just prove themselves night in and night out. Going from another team that maybe thought they didn't have it, or for whatever contract reasons didn't want them. But they were counted out, and they found their way in Indiana. Nesmith has been incredible. I mean, last night had 7 threes, 25 points. Jalen Smith has been the backup big for them before starting now with the lineup change. So they're two guys that Carlisle relies on, and I think they're playing insanely well. Jalen Smith shooting awesome numbers from 3 this year. He's been great around the rim. Rebounding well. So I'm just glad that those guys kind of found their way a little bit. I think they got room to grow as well. But defensively, Nesmith has been awesome. And they're just two guys that are easy to root for. So I'm just glad that they got their chance and they're doing really well with it. So it's not an exact moment, but I think that them just emerging, like I said, as real contributors to this team is really cool to see.
Yeah, Nesmith the whole year has been like slowly ascending, and I think there's a part of him that is really attached to the Pacers, both because he's got an opportunity here and because of shifting the narrative of that trade he had with the Celtics. And like we were talking about this last night in the press room, and some of it is just that he just had a phenomenal game, right? He had 7 threes last night, but like what a bargain that contract already is, and they have him for 4 more years. I mean, he has been phenomenal on defense, like especially when he's not guarding a guy 7 inches taller than him. And he's shooting, like I think he leads the league in 3-point percentage, or he's second. Like he has just been absolutely ridiculously good for the Pacers on both ends. Like that's a great player to have on their team. And yeah, Smith had a rocky last season, but they figured out what position made sense for him, and he got benched and said, "Okay, I'm gonna use this as an opportunity. I'm not gonna sulk about this." And he has been phenomenally better than last season, like at every single skill in a meaningful way for the Pacers. They both deserved to be starters, and we'll see if this works long term. But through 3 games, they've both been great. That lineup's been great. Smith Turner looks like a completely different front court than last season. I mean, their emergences, they're both still young, right? Like having them both have this ascent is just phenomenal for the Pacers to have more young guys who are meaningfully important to their team. I mean, that is big picture important, but micro important to have them both be good is huge for the team, and it's been very fun to see this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And the 2020 guys just continuing to prove themselves. I think we have We don't have all of them, but it feels like it. I mean, so it's cool to see that opportunity just be given to them, and they've earned it. I mean, you can tell on the court, it shows. So
Toppin, Wara. Am I missing? I mean, obviously Haliburton. I mean, I wonder if they'll get any more as the season progresses. Fun year 2023 was. Pacers didn't accomplish what they wanted last year, but they certainly look like they're on a path to play a game after the regular season at least this year because of growth they put in 2023. Speaking of meaningful games, we'll go shorter on this because there was a lot that happened last night, and I have a lot to talk about with the Bucks this week. Might be a rivalry brewing. We'll see what Monday brings us. You can't ignore it. I have to talk about the Bucks a little bit. I hope it's a rivalry because I love NBA games with added passion. I think Giannis is going to be up for it after what happened. I think the Pacers are going to be ready after what happened. What are you looking forward to in Pacers Bucks tonight?
Well, it'll be cool to see who gets the game ball after game.
Albert has the third 2020 game. Do the Bucks steal the game ball? Yeah,
you never know. We'll find out, I guess. But yeah, no, I mean, so what's funny is like I think the last 3 years, Pacers just like never beat Milwaukee.
Never.
So it's just like, just to have two this year is cool. But we get more chances. So the Pacers lost their last matchup to Milwaukee, which was, I think, their first this year. And then, it'll be interesting to see what that lineup change does for the Pacers. I think their last matchup had Hield, Toppin, and Brown starting versus the new guys. Now, I don't know if Bruce Brown will play, if he's coming back yet, but what the lineup looks like with him inserted in it will be, interesting. I hope Nesmith still starts just because of the way he guarded Giannis last time. That seemed like, at least a good matchup, even though we don't have a ton of people that can do that. He's always been up for it. So I guess I'm just looking forward to see what that will look like. Defensively, you always have to worry about Giannis. So see if we can stop him or contain him,
Yeah, he had a franchise record for points last time, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, he's phenomenal. They can't stop him. And this sounds dumb because they've won 3 of their last 4 against the Bucks. But I always would joke if Giannis plays, they can't beat the Bucks. They just can't. Last year, I put this on the list when I was making my 2023 best of list. I cut this game first. It was the first game I cut, but they did win in Milwaukee last year in March in a game that Giannis did play in. That was the game McConnell had 19 and 12, and they had 22 threes, and Haliburton didn't even play, and they somehow won because they were just on fire from deep. George Hill had 15 points. That game was phenomenal. So I keep saying that they struggle with Giannis because I go back to Giannis' whole career, but recently they've done better. But you kind of throw out the past after what happened in the last game, right? With the game ball, with the chippy foul from Giannis on Tyrese, with the chippy foul from Aaron Nesmith onto Giannis, with the techs. I mean, bring in Oscar Tshiebwe, who knows? James Johnson's around now. That's going to be something, I think. And I hope it's a rivalry brewing. I think it's going to be more personal. And I think that the in-season tournament alone elevated the meaning of these games, but now there's a lot more to it. So I hope it's a rivalry. I am looking forward to it myself. Zach, this was fun. Thank you for the time as we close out the year. Great year at Locked On Pacers, and you all listening are the reason that's possible. Where can people find you and your work covering the Indiana Pacers, Zach Pearson?
Yeah, so you can find what I write at pacerpress.com, and my Twitter's below at ZA Pearson NBA. So come check it out.
Give Zach a follow. He will be covering some games this season in Gainbridge Fieldhouse. I will be in the Fiserv Forum tonight for Pacers Bucks. I will be on tracking the game ball duty for all 48 minutes of action. So we'll see what happens there, if anything actually comes of it. So last travel podcast tomorrow, either in a hotel or in the Fiserv Forum. We'll see. And then back to the home base for a long time. I apologize for the mini shows with different audio and video quality, but thank you all for listening, both today and this whole year. It's a blast to do the show. I absolutely love it. We're talking Pacers Bucks tomorrow, and I'll probably do a segment on the Anunoby trade because he's not on the Pacers. What does that mean, if anything? Where do the Pacers, Raptors, etc. go next? Lots to cover in Pacerland. Big games coming. Huge month of their schedule coming. We'll talk about it all on Locked On Pacers. Thank you all for listening. Have a great day, and we'll see you next year.